My name's Whyte. I've been living and traveling and selling in different countries across Europe for the past 25 years. Since 2011, I started my own business where I specialize in the training and development of sales resources, regardless of whether they are BDR, SDRs, or AEs. I usually work with startups and SMEs. And initially, I was helping German companies to penetrate international markets. Now, in post-COVID, I'm just building some remote workers. And I've been studying different cultures. So it just really fascinated me since I was about 15 years old. I've been studying different cultures across the world.
How important is it for startups to consider cultural differences when positioning and marketing their products internationally? And what are some examples of cultural missteps that can harm a startup's reputation in a new market?
I think this not only applies to startups, applies to any kind of company, big or small. And I think you need to look at the different countries. If you look at different countries and you understand how do they purchase, what is their buying journey, their customer journey. For example, if we was to go to Scandinavia and you was to promote especially let's say in Sweden, these guys are very, very brand conscious. So regardless of what your customer testimonials are online, if they don't know your brand, it's going to be very, very hard for you to penetrate that market. Whereas somewhere like the Germans or, the Central Europeans, they're not so much brand conscious, but they want something that's kind of stable. So it's a bit much more mature. So they're going to be looking at what the customer review, the structure and the process of the organization. So they want to know that you've got a customer portfolio, you've got a sales deck, and they want to see these presentations and they want to see the collateral that comes with it. Because with a German company, they're very structured and more process driven. It's got a good process and a good structure to it. There is a good chance that the product is going to be secure and safe. And that's how they would make their purchasing decisions. These two countries are very close to one another. But the way they think and the factors that they consider when making a purchasing decision are completely different. And I think companies need to understand that and utilize that information to when they're marketing.
In what ways do cultural norms and values influence the way that customers make purchasing decisions? And how can startups leverage these differences to successfully market their products in a new country?
If I was going to sell to a German person, I'd want to make sure that my website looked very professional, that I've got a good presentation deck, a good company portfolio, and it's done professionally, that I approach them in the right way. If you came to Germany, you maybe came on a cold call and tried to sell to them, they would immediately bring the defenses up and they would block. So you wouldn't go, that's not how you sell to a German person, but that is exactly how you go to a UK person. You'd want to give them a cold call, get to the point, tell us about the features, advantages, and benefits. What's the offer in it for me? The Brits are much more used to cold calling and having that engagement, and just don't waste my time. Tell me, why are you calling me? What's the benefits? And let's schedule a meeting to talk about it further. With a German person, I'd more present myself. Hey, sir, look, this is my company. So here's some information about my company. I thought it could benefit you because of this and this reason. We were working with these companies in a similar industry to you. Please have a look at the information and I'll follow up next week to see what you think about it and see if we can schedule a call to discuss this further. It's a completely different style because you view the cultural difference. With the Brits, we're much more open to communication and new interactions and connecting and networking. It's not saying we're open to making friends and we're doing business. I think Germans are open to doing business, but it's the way that they approach them. You have this kind of defensive wall up there. And so you need to understand that and understand that it takes time for them to build that relationship with you before they're willing to do business with you. So that kind of, that come to this kind of, are they relationship focused or are they deal focused? And I think the cultural, there is that kind of scale. One side is very relationship focused. One side is very deal focused. And all the countries across the world, they fit into this scale somehow. You need to understand where the country is or the buyer, where they fit on that scale, because that is going to determine your engagement and negotiation and obviously the marketing strategy. They should be present, or they should dictate how you engage or your process for dealing with that company or that country.
So what are some effective strategies for managing multicultural teams within a startup environment? And how can leaders ensure that all team members feel valued and supported regardless of their cultural background?
I think there's different companies, different leaders, different people. When I go into a team, an organization, especially a startup organization, I believe that people create the organizational culture. I don't believe it's up to the manager, whether it's the manager's responsibility to create an organizational culture. They pick what companies do. They have their cultural identity and they select people during the recruitment process that fit into that cultural identity. When you have a startup company, you don't have that cultural identity. So at the time, you're kind of pitching according to different criteria. Once you've got a few people in the organization, then that cultural identity or that organizational culture is then formed. So I believe that it's not the manager's job. What they need to do is focus on the individuals and not the team or the group. As for a startup company, especially a startup company, we're talking about a team of less than 15 people. If it's less than 15 people, I think the manager should have enough time to manage those 15 people on an individual level. And in terms of my strategy, especially now, which is now evolved post-COVID, dealing with remote workers, dealing with people in a hybrid working environment, dealing with people who are going through difficult times, I believe that the best way to manage and get that the individuals feel valued and the organization as well is receiving that value, the best way to do that is for a manager to understand the resources. What are their personal values? What are their personal goals and aspirations? And regardless of the organization, forget the organization, keep the organization separate. What are their personal goals, personal values, and ambitions and drives? I think that is the most important thing these days, because we as managers, what do you want to achieve? Where do you want to get to in the organization? Well, I think sometimes people now become robotic and just say this and okay, in the next 5 years, I want to be manager and and they say what they want to hear. It's an unrealistic question. So there's an unrealistic answers come out the end of it. Managers need to understand, what are your personal goals? What are your personal drives? Somebody could say, look, I'm here. I want to go and work in, say, Amazon, but I need to get some work experience first, and that's where I want to go. Okay, fine. But at least then the manager knows how to manage that person, how to develop that person. They're not going to groom that person then to become one of the next managing directors of the organization, but they're still going to give them the experience, expose them to the experience and maybe the training to help them progress and develop into their career. In terms of making or understanding strategies for multicultural teams, managers need to not think of the team as a whole, think of them as individual people, understand what their personal goals are. Once you've understand their personal goals, align those personal goals to the needs of the organization and what you need to achieve. Once you've created that alignment, you set milestones and you work together to achieve them. Just to give you an example of that, with one of my workers, she said she wanted to open an orphanage and do work with the homeless people in 10 years' time. I said, okay, fine. We'll break that down. Let's work backwards. So you're 23 now, but in the next 10 years or so, you're going to need managerial experience. You're going to need to have finances, and you're going to need to have some kind of business strategy. You need to start saving some money. So putting some money from your commission and from your wages, you should put 10% aside. In terms of the role, you need to do some managerial experience. Once we find some projects that you come in and you start managing these projects, and then we can develop your project and management experiences. And we put together a timeline, a plan of about 5 years. And then we broke it down. We'd got a plan for the next 12 months of what we was going to achieve and how we was going to achieve it. We put milestones and checkpoints in place to make sure that we was going to achieve it. She became one of my superstar workers. She was doing like 60 hours a week for me during the conference last year. She was doing like 60, 70 hours a week for me. And it was the value and the effort. They really excelled. And it was just amazing. We were so under pressure. We had so much going on and the teams were just there. They all stepped up and they all did their part. And we pulled off a brilliant conference. We maintained our customers. It was just great. And that's how I'd say, understand the personal values, align those to the organizational needs, work backwards, create a plan, set checkpoints, milestones, and execute.
So sometimes cultural barriers come via language differences. As you have lived in different countries, do you have an opinion? How could companies overcome language barriers and effectively communicate their brand message to customers in the new market?
I think if the company's having language barriers, they've made a mistake in their strategy somewhere. Because when you create a strategy, you're trying to create something that's going to be effective. If you're English speaking and you can't speak French, there's no point you designing a solution for the French market because you're going to be at a disadvantage because you can't speak French. When you've created a product, those things should have been involved in the market research or in the research and preparation stage. Where is going to be the easiest win? Where is going to be the lucrative? What is your ideal customer profile? Your ideal customer profile cannot be a person or an organization where there's language difficulties. If there's a problem defining your ICP, but if it is maybe that you're expanding, then you've obviously allocated money to make sure you've got those resources in place. I believe that when you're creating a go-to-market strategy, I think that's a one thing that companies, a lot of startups really do wrong. Is that they create the products, they say they can sell it to everyone. Well, yes, in theory, of course, you can sell it to everyone. You have your total available market. But what is your ICP? What is your ideal customer profile? What is the most easiest way for you to sell it, or to the easiest channel, or the easiest group of people for you to sell this to? It may not be the most valued, it may not be the highest priced, but it'd be the easiest in terms of quickest and shortest sales cycle and the most value for money in terms of return on investment. That is your ideal customer profile. And there should not be language barriers, even when you're marketing on a big international platform like LinkedIn. Your marketing should be tailored and targeting a certain group. That's your ICP. Regardless of if other people pick it up and people from outside of that group pick up that marketing, those marketing should be tailored in a way that your ICP are going to notice it and pull it out and act on it. Once you're big enough to expand, then you'll hire resources who can effectively get you into those countries.
To close, the importance of multicultural diversity management in 3 words or 3 concepts, if you like.
I think it's the ultimate win-win solution, really, isn't it? If everybody feels comfortable and they feel happy when they're interacting, they feel, I got heard, I got my point across. That was very personal to me. I was sold to, or I bought in a way that pleased me the most. If everybody's happy, then it's the ultimate win-win solution, isn't it?
Thank you, Lian, for these insights and being with us today.